I'm working on this 1964 wheel horse, model 704 garden tractor. This pull starter don't work right because the aluminum plate behind the flywheel's broken, so there's no place for the bolt to screw in. In the last video, I found some metal scraps to weld together, and I made a piece that could bolt to the top of this bearing plate. This flywheel cover from another engine is in good shape. That's what I used to position this tab where I want it. I've already marked where I want the threaded hole to be. I'm going to take this back off so I can get my hole straight. First, I'll remove the burrs from these holes that I drilled in there. That's a single fluted deburring tool. I want to get the hole perpendicular to the face of this part, so I need to hold this surface flat in the vise. It needs to be near the top of the vise so the drill can pass through. These are precision ground parallels. They come in a set of different sizes so you can support your part where you want it. I have some here that'll hold this 1/4 inch thick part near the top of the vise jaws. I'm going to push down on that part and tighten the vise. The part lifts up a tiny bit when you tighten the vise. If you really want to be precise, you can tap the part down with a soft blow hammer so it's resting on the parallels. For this job, that's close enough, and I'm going to remove the parallels. I already marked where I want the hole using that flywheel housing as a template, so I'm going to use this tap follower because it has a nice point in the center, and I'll line up that point on my punch mark. I use a center drill to put a starting mark in line with the machine spindle. Start with a smaller drill because the first drill always walks around and makes an oversized hole. Then use a finish drill at a slower spindle speed to take it to size. The chamfer should be slightly bigger than where the outside of the threads will be after the hole's tapped. Slightly bigger than the outside of the bolt that goes in there. This pointer thing is a spring-loaded tap follower. Use it to hold the top of the tap in position while you're turning it. The spring-loaded pointer follows the tap handle down while you're tapping and keeps that point in position while it's moving down. Now there's a burr in the bottom of the hole, but if I use this deburring tool, the drill chuck won't fit next to it. I'm going to file it flat. And then I spin the tap through there again to make sure I didn't create a new burr with the file. Here it is after painting. I think I'm ready to put it back on. I was considering putting the bolts in from this side. That would give me more clearance around that cooling pin on the block, but I think that would be more likely to crack the aluminum. The nuts have more surface area to spread the force out. I'm going to put the nuts on the aluminum side. I don't have any red Loctite, or I'd use it. I have plenty of the blue stuff, so I'm going to use that. I'm going to turn all the nuts so the flats line up. That'll give me more clearance at the cooling pin on the block. That looks good. And all the flats line up. I have the paint scratched up already, because I've been adjusting the shape of this starter housing. The top part lines up pretty good, but this bottom part sticks out too far. This bottom was all rusted out. A few years ago I cut this bottom section from another starter housing and welded it onto this one. Looks like I added a little too much metal. So that's the way it is, and I'm going to use it like that. These holes are all wallered out, and some of them's broken out. I'm going to weld some washers over the holes to get the strength back. So I'm going to make sure those areas are flat. I have some washers that fit the 1/4-20 threads pretty well. So how do I know where I want them? I'll bolt it together and mark the position somehow. Well, before I mark the position, I have to clean the paint off of those areas. That should be good. I'm going to do 2 spots of weld on each washer. That short bolt goes over here where the housing gets close to the flywheel. I'm going to position this looking at the top features, knowing that the bottom is going to hang out a little bit on the outside. I'll try to mark this position so I know where the washer goes. Yeah, I don't think that's going to work very well. I don't like that. I'm going to try something different. Now I have a different plan. I'm going to use a small bushing under the nutter bolt to hold the washer down. That'll give me clearance to weld the washer, but not the bolt. For this one, I have a short bushing, but that washer overhangs the cover a bit, and it interferes with that ledge there. I'm going to grind a flat on one side for clearance. I'm going to loosen this bolt just to make sure the cover's seated against that ledge. Now with the flat on there, the washer clears the ledge, and that's where I want it. I'll go put a flat on this washer. For the rest of these, I had to get a longer bolt to hold my bushing down. It looks like that washer don't need a flat. Now that I've added a washer here, I'll need to get a bolt that's a little bit longer. There's some burrs on here from that sander. Some of the weld melted through the metal. I'm going to take those bumps off of there. When I took this apart, all the gaskets stayed stuck to the block nicely, and this side is already pretty clean, so I'm going to put some gasket sealer on there and put it back together. But first, there were 3 wires in this hole here, and they just barely fit. So I'm going to fish the wires through the hole before I bolt the plate down. I'll position the coil first to get the plug wire in the right place, and then add the small wires around it. There's some rust on the back of this wire, so that part was mashed against the condenser. The wire needs to be tucked inward to avoid touching the flywheel. There's 4 bolts that hold this plate on. One of them's under the coil. So I'll just use 1 bolt to hold this in place while I'm working on it. That looks like it comes out in the right place. Seems like that wire should be closer. You want to make sure the wire don't come out of the coil. The kill switch wire comes in from the other direction. Both of the small wires go to this screw terminal. This other small wire here comes from the points. Now I don't like how that small wire comes over the big wire. I want to get both of those small wires next to each other coming through the hole. That feels better. All the wires have more room that way. And it looks like all the wires can get to where they need to be. I degreased most of this stuff, so I need to get some oil on the bearing area. I'm using this old Permatex former gasket number 2. It's non-hardening. I'll just put a light coating on there. My holes don't line up. I missed it. I'll put that 1 bolt in to hold it in place. Make sure everything gets to where it needs to be before the plate gets bolted down. These bolts have a copper washer on them, because the bolt holes go through the block to where the oil is. I'm going to put some gasket sealer on the bolt threads to keep the oil from coming through. Make sure all the wiring's laying low to clear the flywheel. Got to make sure the spark plug wire's all the way in also. Well, that's as far as I'm going this time. It's on the way back together. The next parts will be the magnet that excites the coil and the flywheel. Alright, that's it.